Good afternoon to everyone. Today we have our second interview with one of the candidates for the upcoming special election in Georgia for the 14th Congressional District, replacing Marjorie Taylor Greene, who resigned in January after disagreements with President Trump. Star Black, today we have a Republican. Thank you so much for coming. We'll start with the main question. What motivated you to run in the special election, and how do you plan to bring new things for the district?
Well, what made me run is actually I'm the only Republican candidate that's been in this race since June. So I was looking to primary Marjorie before she quit. And I live in the district. I've lived in the district for 17 years, and I just found that our current representative was phenomenal at grabbing headlines, but nothing was being done in the district. So that because I have a passion for where I live is the reason why I wanted to run.
So, one of the main issues many voters across America and also in your district are struggling is affordability. I mean, families are dealing with high costs and also economic uncertainty. And what are your plans to lower costs, support small businesses, and also create more jobs in your district?
Absolutely. Affordability is, things are so much more expensive than they have ever been. But to create my passion is to help the small businesses, to help them we need to build up our trade schools. That is something that I think is truly that we got away from as a country. Let's face it, not everybody's going to go to college. And AI is not going to fix your plumbing. It's not going to fix your HVAC. We need those technical skills. And in turn, what that does, if we provide the necessary funding for those trade schools, is they become the entrepreneurs. They start building into the tax base. They're not moving away for a job. They're staying in their small towns, and it only builds up the small towns and create generational wealth. So we definitely need to focus on our small businesses. And the other piece we need to do is, as a congresswoman, is to get those other big businesses in that will create a lot of jobs in the district. So it's actually a twofold. We need small and big businesses in the 14th.
And do you think that can be achieved by lowering corporate tax, for example, expanding the Trump's tax cuts that he did in 2017, for example?
Yeah, if we cut the taxes, well, actually, it's more on the state level that would actually cut the tax breaks. But from a federal level, we need to make sure that the corporations are paying their appropriate portion of the tax and not passing that on to the burden of the individual.
Now, President Trump initiated last year a lot of trade policies relative to tariffs, and that impacts agriculture and also manufacturing in your district, and specifically in Georgia, which is one of the most important states in terms of manufacturing in America. And do you support these tariffs, or do you aim for something different? I don't know.
I think the tariffs actually, I mean, America has been taken advantage of. We've been uh, allowing other countries to come in and not pay their fair share to trade in our free and open market. So I do believe the tariffs will automatically begin correcting what has been wrong, and that revenue that it brings in will only help the taxpayers in the long run. The other thing that we need to look at doing is working with the USDA to specifically the Prime Act, because what we're finding is our our farmers are not able to take their beef, their chicken, their livestock to a processing plant that is close if they sell over $100,000 in a given year. So that makes it unfair for the small farmers and ranchers to be able to get their food from the farm to the table quickly. So we need to get those regulations out of the way of our small business farmers and agricultural areas.
Also, another important aspect is healthcare. Healthcare access in your district, and especially mental services as well, is indeed a very important issue. And what concrete federal policies do you support to improve affordability in terms of healthcare? And also, do you support revoking the subsidies, the Obamacare subsidies?
I think the federal government actually messed up healthcare. They broke it. And the federal government does not need to be in the healthcare business and subsidizing these large companies. You know, the Affordable Care Act did not incentivize insurance companies to lower their rates. And competition in America is what drives our prices down. And what has happened is the American public got a false sense of security that their insurance premiums were going to be low. But what happened is the federal government with the Affordable Care Act actually came in and made up the difference. So there was no incentive for the insurance companies to reduce their costs. So natural competition, when the federal government gets out of the way and stops providing federal funding for that, then that money can be used otherwise. As far as healthcare itself, we need to go back and put back in state mental health facilities or federal health facilities to get those folks out of the prisons and open up those beds to truly help the mental health of our citizens.
Would you defend a state-funded healthcare system for all?
I think the states do a phenomenal job for their citizens, and the federal government needs to get out of their way.
Right. So you highlighted as well a lot of government waste and inefficiency. And also, how do you plan and how would you be, if you are elected to Congress, what would you cut if you are there?
What would I cut? Well, actually, there's not, what we need to truly cut is all the fraud and abuse. We also need to not have pork in our bills. It needs to be a one issue, one vote bill. I find that a lot of the special projects and pet projects, so to speak, get inserted into our bills, and then it becomes an all or nothing. So we need to have a one issue, one vote way in Congress.
Also, the government spending is out of the roof and also national debt. That's also a very important problem for America. How do you plan to as well, in terms of the question I asked you before, what are the bipartisan solutions we can have to strengthen the economy, but at the same time repay some of the debt?
We need to actually, come together and decide the appropriations in July. We need to run the federal government like a business and not a subsidy. So we need to get out of the way and make sure that what we're doing in Congress is actually approved in July, and the American, look at what's happening right now with the government shutdowns. If we agree to appropriations in July, then neither party can hold the citizens hostage on what each one wants. So we need to figure out where we are alike. And it's amazing that we are more alike than we are apart, but that's not what the media wants you to see. So we need to find out what is the best action for our citizens and where do they need the help and the funding. And we need to just fund those items and then compromise on what's best for the American people.
Do you agree with having term limits in Congress?
Absolutely. There is no reason. I know our founding fathers did not intend anyone to make being an elected official a lifelong career.
And what about stock trading?
Oh, oh yes, that is actually one of my big platforms. It's you cannot be focused on the American economy if you're too busy focused on your own portfolio. I mean, as a general citizen, you're put in prison for trading on knowledge that you were given that not everybody is. And our folks in Congress are, and even our elected officials and their families have been given private information that they are using for their personal gains. So I completely believe that stock trading, as long as you're an elected official, should not be allowed.
Do you agree with the regulation of AI?
I do not. I do not think that the federal government should be regulating innovation. I mean, let's face it, we all said the same thing when the internet came about, how horrible it was going to be, and now we just can't live without it. So I think we need to allow it to do what it's going to do. And, just like even the Industrial Revolution, when machines were replacing things in automotive, everyone was afraid. And we typically, as Americans, things we don't know about, we become afraid of. So AI is nothing to be afraid of. I think we need to embrace it. Do we need to make sure that fake things are not going out? I think those guardrails need to be put in place, but it does not need an overall regulation.
Right now, the federal minimum wage is at $7.25 per hour. Do you think this needs to be raised?
I think that is a state option. I don't think the federal government should have a voice in that because, to be able to survive in California is a whole lot different than surviving in rural Georgia. And I do not think that the federal government needs to be involved in dictating that. I think that's truly a state responsibility.
America is now expected to lose population starting after 2050, and that's due to now people are having less children than in the past. How do you plan to address the issue of sustainability in Social Security?
Social Security is, it's something that every American who works has paid into. We need to make sure that what originally broke it is they took money away from it. So to use it for something else, it needs to be secured. It needs to um, not be touched by the federal government, and it is a right because we've all paid into it. So we need to find ways to make sure that it could truly grow and build on the interest that we have for folks in our district.
Okay, now let's talk about another issue: border security and also immigration, an issue that has been now on trending because of ICE's actions. And 1610 American says that ICE has been too tough and too out of the limit. Do you agree with this affirmation, or do you think ICE should be doing its job how it's doing right now?
Well, I think there is a huge misunderstanding on what the role of ICE is. Um, and it's been highlighted, of course, of what's, the unfortunate tragedy of what happened in Minnesota. But if you look at what the act, if the American public understood what the role of ICE is and how it works with law enforcement, the way it's supposed to happen is the local government or the either the city or the sheriffs or the county sheriffs, they detain the illegal aliens, and then they communicate with ICE that they have someone in their presence that is not a legal citizen. And it's up to ICE to do the check of saying whether they should have a hold or not. If ICE determines that yes, they need to have a hold, then the local law enforcement actually detains that person until ICE comes in, transports that person to a detention facility where their immigration is handled. What we found in Minnesota is the mayor and the governor, if you will notice, in any of those videos, there is no local police around. So they've allowed um, the system to be broken and broadcast. So we, as a matter of fact, I just spoke with a sheriff here that says that they have worked very closely with ICE, and when they are involved, then the system works like it's supposed to. So, yes, I do believe that if you are not in the United States legally, you have broken the law and you are not entitled to the wonderful benefits that our country provides. Come back legally and you are welcome here.
Also, another important issue is the Second Amendment now, and that now it's a very important issue for your voters because you are in a very conservative district. And how would you protect gun ownership rights with also addressing concerns about public safety?
I think every citizen, has the right to bear arms. I think one thing that does need to be created is, you cannot conceal and carry in all of the states in America. And we need to have that right to where you can actually carry your firearm from state to state without being, concerned that you are breaking the law. So we do need to do that. I think, I live in Kennesaw, Georgia, and in Kennesaw, of course, when gun rights come up, Kennesaw has a law in the books that every homeowner must own a firearm. And we have some of the lowest crimes and the highest paid police. So I believe our forefathers made it a Second Amendment right, not further down, that every American has the right to bear arms and protect themselves.
But do you support expanding universal background checks for gun purchases?
I think we need to make sure that the guns are not in the hands of folks who should, the criminals that should not have them. So yes, I do believe we need to have a waiting period so that emotions are not tied to purchasing a firearm for malicious intent. But for what most Americans use guns for, or firearms for, it's usually hunting, it's for their own protection. So, we do need to make sure that they are in the right hands, but it is legally their right to go through the process to own it.
Also about abortion, and we talked about Medicare before, do you support a federal ban on abortion?
I do. I think conception, life begins at conception. God created life, and it is not up to man to terminate it. So I truly support that.
Okay, so now let's move on to foreign policy. President Trump has been advocating for Greenland over the course of the last year. Do you think that's reasonable considering what President Trump said about the necessity of America to have in terms of national security?
President Trump is not the first one that's been interested in Greenland. If you look back, almost every single president has wanted rights to Greenland. Our president just happens to be the one that talks about it and it's in the press. So our interest in Greenland is not something new. It is a very strategic location. It also has very rich in mineral rights. It's a military strategic point. Now, do I agree about the way of going about it? I think the policy is there, and we should look at how everybody will win strategically by giving us more access.
But how would you view the taking of Greenland in a way that it's according to international law?
We definitely need to follow international law. I mean, the country does not need to, come in and just militarily take it over. We would be no different than Russia taking over another country. So we do need to do it through diplomatic relations.
But for example, now let's talk about also Ukraine. Do you support reducing US foreign aid to Ukraine?
To Ukraine, we need to look at we're actually making money on that war, believe it or not. We're selling um, our military weapons. And so it's not like we're giving them money, we're selling them our technology in order to fight it. So, we have to make sure the diplomacy, especially in that strategic area, um, and that our way of life, the democracy is it, because it's such a volatile area. If democracy is lost, then the entire European continent is in jeopardy.
Don't you think the rhetoric President Trump has been using with European allies is not so great in terms of foreign relations?
Um, if you read The Art of the Deal, you will find the way that our president works. He goes for the shock factor, and that knocks everybody on their heels. And then that's not the total picture of what he's going for. I'm sure we would certainly be surprised if they just went with his first offer. And you do that in business. You offer the most outrageous thing, and then you're willing to negotiate it back to what you truly want. So I think folks have just not gotten used to that yet.
Because, for example, saying that he wants Greenland, I know many presidents have did that in America. The problem is you were saying that to a NATO ally. I mean, Denmark was one of the countries that offered help to the United States during the 9/11. So, I mean, probably not the best way to do it. At least that's my opinion here.
Well, it certainly creates a shock factor, and it brings them to the table to negotiate.
So you think President Trump could possibly buy Greenland in the future?
Um, I don't know that we will probably buy it because if you look at our national debt, we just don't have the money to buy it. I do believe that there will be a great negotiation between Denmark and us on how we can strategically be a key player in it.
I was here with Sean Harris a couple of days ago, and he mentions that most of the Republicans, and we have 17 in this race, they are just here to stay with Trump and to align with Trump. What would you say to him in terms of I'm here to be independent and I'm here to also to say something when Trump is doing bad things?
Well, let's face it. I mean, President Trump's not going to be on the ticket. So I have been my goals and my policies do align with the president, but I will never sacrifice my integrity or what's good for the district just because the president requires it. I always, because I live in this district and I've been focused on this district, I'm going to do what's best for the folks in Georgia 14, regardless of the pressure.
Do you support requiring voter ID for all federal elections?
I do. We need to make sure that who is coming to the polls is truly who that person is. We need to make sure that I mean, you can't now. I mean, look at air travel. You cannot get on an airplane without a real ID, and and that should be the same way. I mean, we're tightening up our security on our airlines. Why shouldn't we also tighten it for federal elections?
Do you support increased drilling for oil and gas on federal land?
Yes, I do. I was actually raised in the oil industry. My mother was worked for the third largest oil company in Houston as I was growing up. So I grew up with oil in my blood, as a lot of us refer to in Texas. And we have some great resources. We want to get away from foreign oil when we've got it right here. Why not use it? It's cheaper, and we can actually keep it within our borders.
And don't you think maybe nuclear options or even renewables are better options to produce more energy at the same time?
Well, I do think nuclear does offer some great alternatives, but I do not believe putting all your eggs in one basket is going to solve the issue. We need to make sure that we have multiple points so that we have no one single point of failure.
Do you support work requirements for people to access welfare programs?
I do. If I do believe, I love the fact that, if you are able to work, you should be working, and in order to receive benefits, because if you look at what was in the One Big Beautiful Bill that said, it was, I believe it's 80 hours a month that you have to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a job. You could also volunteer. So that makes people get into this, working and getting used to that. They could volunteer at a childcare and bring their children with them. So it's not as though they have to go out and get a job, but volunteering, a lot of people miss that is also an option. I know when I had my business and I was trying to hire folks, they're like, I can make more money just sitting on my couch getting unemployment. Why would I want to go to work?
Yes.
And then that makes folks just with a hand out instead of giving them a hand up.
If
and
you're
that's what I
elected,
believe it's intended for.
yeah, okay. If you're elected, will you aim to release the full Epstein files?
I think the Epstein files, I mean, of course, we need to abide by the law. And if they were ordered to release them, then they should be released. I think there's a bigger issue here that I think a lot of folks are missing. The question, and it could be a very slippery slope that we're going on, are we going to begin to release all convicted sex trafficker files to the nation? And so I look at it in a bigger question, not just because of it being politically motivated and it being, the wealthy people or the folks behind it. But my question is, okay, if we open this door and we release all this information, and I think it's also the survivors or the victims of this, they have to opt in that they want them released, and it needs to be 100% opt in to release, because they're really the victims of this crime. But the question comes, are we going to do this now for every single convicted sex trafficker?
Okay, so do you support eliminating the Federal Department of Education?
Absolutely. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that the federal government should fund education. There is nothing in the Constitution. And our states do an amazing job of knowing what our children need, and it should be at the actual choice of the parent of how their child, because they know their child better than anybody, and they know how their child learns. And so I truly believe that the states should regulate their education process.
Also, many voters feel Washington is out of touch. How would you ensure regular accountability to constituents through specific mechanisms like audits, reporting, or direct engagement, for example?
Yeah, we need, as the next Congresswoman, I plan on making sure that all audits are given back to our district, that they are aware of it, letting them know every step of the way of, we've got to make sure that the money we're giving is being used for that purpose. And anytime, like when I worked for FEMA, we always had a closeout group. The closeout group actually came in and inspected what that money was used for. And if it wasn't used for what it was intended to in that grant, then that money was taken back. And we have just been giving money away and not checking on it to make sure it was used for its intended purpose. So conveying that back to the district so that they're fully aware of what we're looking into, and making sure that they're aware of the monies that we have recouped and which groups are doing it right.
Sean Harris mentions that we can have a lot of town halls across Georgia in your district. Do you think that's a reasonable option for you if you are elected?
I'm sorry, what was it? That they
Town
could have
halls, to have town halls.
town halls. Absolutely. When I am not in the seat, up in DC, I will be in the district listening to the people. I truly believe that God gave us two ears and one mouth, and it should be used in that proportion. So I am the voice of the Georgia 14, and I can't be the voice if I'm not listening to the people. So town halls is one of the best ways, and also having an extensive constituent services.
So we know that we have 21 candidates for this election. 17 of those are Republicans. How will you plan to stand out of those 17 Republicans?
Well, actually, we just had one on Sunday uh, decide to bow out of the race. So now we're down to 16.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Nope, nope, that just happened this weekend. Uh, but I am the only person running in this race that has federal experience. For the past 28 years, when I worked for FEMA, I worked with almost every single federal agency. So I know their process and I know how to get things done for my constituents. So I'm the only one with federal experience in out of all of the folks that are on this ticket. And this is a federal job, and no one else has held that federal job but me.
If elected, because we now have a very tight Congress, 220 Republicans were elected and 215 Democrats. How would you plan to deliver things for the Georgia people? Because we really have a divided Congress, and how would you achieve the bipartisan work to pass measures?
Well, like I said, we are probably more alike than we are different. When an issue is brought up or a bill is brought up, I look at it as how is it going to benefit the Georgia 14th district? Because those are the people I represent. And if it doesn't benefit them, then my vote is a no. But if there's things in there that would benefit them, I, I've had four businesses that I started from the ground up, and I know that you just cannot start them off by saying no. So we need to look at where we align, and then we need to see what truly making sure that our core principles and our integrity is not jeopardized. Of what is this bill going to bring to the district? And whether it's a Democrat that brings it up or it's a Republican that brings it up, it doesn't matter. It's what is it going to do for the folks in the 14th district? And if there's more in it that will benefit the folks of the 14th district, then my vote, we would talk about the things on the fringes. And sometimes we have to say, okay, I'm willing to step aside from those items if you're willing to step away from those items and benefit to where it's a win-win for everyone, especially the folks in the 14th district.
Right now, just to end the interview, what is your direct message to the people of Georgia for this election, and what do you want them to do on March the 10th?
Well, first off, we got to make sure everybody is registered to vote by February 6th. So if you're not registered, please make sure that you get registered by the 6th. We start early voting February 16th. And I truly believe that we need, because this is for the rest of Marjorie's term, we need to send someone like myself that has federal experience so it's not a learning curve because time is of the essence. So you need someone that is going to know the process, to know how it's done, and to be the voice of Georgia 14th, not the rest of America.
Thank you so much. That was a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. Thank you.